Late June, first week in July is a time of transition in the garden. Normally all the things that were doing really well, flowering really well in May and June, are finished, and some of the plants will last all the way till autumn, but they do need to be cut back round about now because the first flush is finished. Now I have this campanula which has now finished flowering, and I've cut it right back. Now what will happen is it's going to come back, and by September this will all be full again, full of these purple blue flowers. You can see the Asiatic lilies coming to the end now. Flowers about mid-June. Doesn't flower long, but it does a job. Also, it looks like the fuchsia riccatoni is starting to flower. I've actually cut this back twice to try and keep it compact, because it can grow really big if left to its own devices, and I tend to find if you cut it back it'll stay compact, and it's full of these flowers. And around about this time of year, July, this is when the fuchsias come into their own. A lot of them will start flowering, and they'll carry on going all the way through, even to December. The frost stays off. Potentilla has not started flowering just yet. This is Potentilla KOBOLD. It's a bit behind at the moment, but come July, mid-July, this should be coming into full flower. Also, round about this time of year, the hibiscus starts to flower. Lasts about 6 weeks. Really nice shrub this. You do have to wait though for it to put on the growth, but it's fantastic round about August time, early August. Any hebes normally started to end the flowering period. Well, the ones that flower in May, you do get hebes that flower in July, but the May flowering hebes normally ended at this point, and sometimes I'll need to cut them back depending on how leggy that they're getting. This blue salvia that I love has been late this year, but I can see, as per usual, it's come up, and come August it'll be full of blue flowers. The Max Fry geranium is doing really well. A lot of the flowers are finished, so I'll cut it back, keep it neat and tidy. Now these herbaceous geraniums, they will come back when you give them a real hard cut back, but some are better than others. Max Fry will make new flowers, but it's not the same as that initial flush of blooms that you get around about the middle of May into June. This has been flowering for a while, but I can see some of the blooms are starting to come to the end. Now this is Salvia East FRIESLAND. Now you find that these salvias, a lot of them can be cut back, right back, and they'll flower again, but not all. Luckily with this one can take quite a hard trim, and like in a matter of weeks it'll be back again with new flowers. But you don't necessarily have to cut it right back, because if you look closer in the plant, lower down, you can see new flowers starting where the other ones have ended. So I'm going to be cutting that back soon. Around about the first week in July, in a lot of gardens, people will give a lot of the perennials a real hard cut back, and they call this the Hampton hack. Now, a lot of people have heard of the Chelsea chop, but not necessarily the Hampton hack. With the Chelsea chop, you're cutting it back early summer, and it will prolong the flowering longer into the summer. But you can wait a bit later to around about July, and when you cut these perennials back around about now, they'll come back again with a lot more blooms, and they'll go right into the autumn. And they'll tend to do this with the likes of this salvia, catmint, agastache, geranium, like Roseanne for example. This is a variety of salvia hot lips, although it's not called hot lips, it's salvia amethyst lips, just like its sister plant, but a different colour. And underneath it, I can see the agastache is starting to put buds out. This starts in July, and you treat this the same. Once it starts getting a bit too leggy, you can hack it right back. In a matter of weeks, it'll be flowering again. Another thing to mention about these woody salvias is they're great for cuttings, and I tend to find they're very successful when you take these cuttings. This is hot lips, and this was a cutting that I took, was it even a year, maybe 2 years ago, from its mother plant, and it doesn't half grow. As soon as it sets the roots down, it's not long before you get a nice plant growing. And just here next to it, got another salvia. It's a pink variety, like a Nemorosa type. I'm not quite sure what the name is, but once again, with this is one of those plants that will keep churning out new flowers if you deadhead the top flower. Bit of Campanula still going here. This one flowered a bit later than the flowers at the back border. Now, round about this time of year, I normally hack the catmint right back because it starts to get really leggy and the first flush of flowers start to fade. But this year, still looking quite tidy, still looking quite neat, and I'm not going to hack it right back this year. I am going to prune it back, but not to the same extent as I normally would. And it's the same principle with this as it is with the salvias and the agastache, and they come from the same plant family. If you look low, further down the stem, the top flowers fade, but there's always 2 stems below with the new flowers that will take over. Now, if I hack this right back, with a matter of weeks it'll be back. Although you do have a bit of a dormant period where you're lacking colour along this border. But like I said, I'm not going to be as harsh this time because it's not as leggy as it would normally get. Now this is a great plant. It's a GEUM, totally tangerine. Now in May, this is full of orange flowers. Now normally with a GEUM, after May, early June, you tend to find that that's the end of the flowering. But these more newer varieties like Total Tangerine will carry on flowering all the way through. They're not as vigorous with the flowering after May, but it still carries on. And I've cut all the original flowering stems that come up in May, cut them right back down, and you can see these new buds coming through, and it'll keep doing this all the way through, right through to October time. Just to the background there I can see my aloe plant, the almost indestructible aloe aristata, flowering again with those really unusual looking flowers. This salvia hot lips has been flowering for a couple of months now, and it's really turned into a monster. But lots and lots of growth out, and I've noticed that we've had a bit of a mini heat wave here the past week or so, and you can see that some of the flowers have turned white. So it goes from red and white to white if you get a bit of heat. You'll notice that some of the flowers look a bit battered. And the reason for this is the bees love this. And you get these big bumblebees. They come onto the flower and they pierce a hole in it, almost rip it to shreds to get to the pollen inside. It's interesting to see. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to cut this back in the next week or so, tidy it up a bit because it is starting to take over the other plants around it, and then the same within a matter of weeks it'll be back again, and this time it's going to go right through to the autumn. You can see it's starting to overtake this salvia here, the viola close, and this is starting to come to an end with the flowering. Now I've noticed with this, if I cut this right back quite harshly, it doesn't come back like some of the other varieties. It will put some new flowers up, but it's not the same. So it's sort of a matter of experiment which types of salvia would respond to this Hampton hack or this July cutback. It's not always guaranteed to be the same show in a few weeks' time. I can just see all these new buds on this hibiscus blue variety. Hasn't really started yet, but by August it should be full. And Dipericum, head coat, full of buds. This is going to flower imminently. In a couple of weeks' time this is going to be absolutely full of these yellow flowers. We should get a few weeks worth of blooms out of that. I've rejigged this area, put this patio in as I mentioned in a previous video. So I've moved quite a few plants here, some flowering plants. Got a campanula there, a white variety. Forgotten the name, I'll have to put it in the title. It looks nice, maybe a bit too much of a cottage garden plant for my liking, but it still looks decent. The Potentilla KOBOLD, that hasn't started yet. Hoping by July we should start to see some of the yellow flowers. It's strange this year, some of the plants are a bit late when it comes to flowering, and up until the heat wave we had last week, it was quite a cool summer, early summer, pretty poor weather, so maybe that's affected things. You can see the daylilies will be starting soon. You can see some of the buds on there. I actually mentioned this in a recent video, and I've moved it. I've moved it from another part of the garden. This Roscoa. It's finished flowering now, but it really looked great. And I had it in a part of the garden where you couldn't even see it. I really like the foliage on it, so I've moved it to somewhere where I've got more chance of actually seeing it. like I said, we have a transitional period. Around about this time of year in this garden, there's not as much flowering, but that's going to change soon. When these fuchsias start putting on some more growth, start producing the buds, these would be fantastic. Beacon fuchsia, these are called. The good thing is, because I've got a lot of evergreen plants, these heucheras do a nice job of making the garden look good while we're waiting for the new flowers to come through in some of the plants. Here's another blue salvia. Salvia patterns, deep blue, patio deep blue. Again, this one come through late, come August though. I'm expecting to see quite a few blue flowers on this. Behind it there is a fuchsia called versicolor. Hasn't really got going just yet. But again, another month or so, you're really going to notice the fuchsias, hopefully, in the garden. Now this is an example of what I was talking about before, about cutting back plants that start to get leggy. If you look at the size of the stem on this, huge stem, part of the catmint, and what happens is it starts to open up. This is one of the reasons why I'll cut it back. Now I could cut it back either all the way quite harshly, or maybe a bit further up the stem, because as you'll notice, there's all new flowers starting off lower down the stem. Now this particular variety, Summer Magic, it's quite a small variety, and it's quite upright growing. It's actually quite neat at its growth habit, but I know with catmint it can get a bit leggy. But here's the thing, this is going to last for about 6 months, so you do need to do a bit of maintenance round about now. It's a great time to do it. Cut it back, tidy it up, and it'll be back in bloom in a matter of weeks, and that'll be it. Right up till October, you'll only be getting these flowers. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.